Thank you everyone for joining in again tonight for another Facebook Live event of Get to Know Your Neighbor. I'm your host, Cameron Geesaman with Geesaman Homes, and tonight I'm hoping to be motivated by our guest. He doesn't know that yet, but his job is to motivate me. As a reminder, each week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30, we'll be doing a Facebook Live interview, kind of like this one, that you're about to see. Our goal, as always, is to introduce you to amazing neighbors in Fishers, Indiana. As we grow this channel, we're asking a favor of all of our viewers. Would you please click the like button, share our page, and then comment with an emoji letting us know that you're here. The more we share, the more we grow. So it helps us grow this channel. So really, tonight, we're shifting a little bit just because I always love talking with our guest. He inspires me and kind of gets me thinking outside the box. He posts questions and ideas, and it just gets me thinking. So tonight I'm interviewing Remington Ramsey. Remington got his start in the business world as a 19-year-old, right in the middle of the 2008 recession, selling CUTCO knives. In 2013, he saw potential and shifted to selling closing gifts to realtors. That's actually when I met him. He came to our office and I felt like all we talked about was real estate and CUTCO, which was fun. Since then, he's created a magazine, hosts a podcast interviewing some of Indy's brightest professionals, and hosts many events connecting real estate agents with vendors. Remington lives in Fishers, Indiana with his wife, Sarah, and 2 girls, and is always thinking about the next business adventure. So please give a warm welcome to Remington Ramsey. There he is.
How's it going?
Hey. Well, before we jump into kind of your career or kind of how that transpired, because I'm really excited, because you and I have talked a lot, but I don't actually know like the step-by-step process and why you did things. So I'm excited about that. But before we get to that, I ask every guest, the first question I ask is, what do you think of? What is the first thing or what comes to mind when we mention the city of Fishers?
Growth mindset. I just think that Central Indiana, Indianapolis is kind of the hub for the entrepreneurial spirit in Indiana. And I think that if you had to pick one city that kind of embraced that, it would be Fishers. It's young and growing. And even if you just look at the downtown, my office is actually right on the Nickel Plate Trail. So I'm watching these 6-story buildings go up right around me. You just look at the growth of big business and small business, and Fishers is right at the center of all that.
When did you move to Fishers?
Right when we got back. So, and went to school in the south side of Chicago, Chicagoland, and graduated in 2011, and then moved back, lived on the north side for like a year, and then moved to Fishers. So we've been here for 8 years? Yeah.
Yeah. So you've kind of experienced at least some of the growth, maybe not all of it, but.
No, I mean, I grew up in Muncie, and I'd make the drive. So it was just driving through cornfields until you hit downtown for the longest time. So I've seen from afar the growth, and then was a part of it the last 8 years.
Muncie is definitely not similar to Fishers.
Not even close.
Both Adam and I went to Ball State. So
okay.
it is definitely different. But what I love about Ball State is when you're on Ball State's campus, it's a hub, right?
Yeah, when you're in school, it's a little different because when you go off campus, you can kind of tell what's going on. But I feel like, so I went to Olivet, which is about 45 minutes south of downtown Chicago. So it's in Bourbonnais, Illinois, which, has a school, and that's about it. It has a mall. And so but when you're in school, you're focused on the next building you're going to in the dorm and that kind of thing. And then the weekend hits and you're like, I have basketball, and that's it to choose from. So with Ball State, at least it was a little bit bigger than that. And the buildings, I mean, man, Ball State in general, like the architecture and the certain programs have really taken off. We've interviewed a couple people, Ball State grads on our podcast that are, sing highest praises for Ball State.
Yeah, it's grown. Okay, so start from the beginning. What makes a 19-year-old decide that they want to sell CUTCO?
The recession, but I didn't realize it. There was no one else hiring. I was actually back in Chicago working for the Chicago Bears training camp, and we're making very little money, but meeting all the players, you know, hanging out on campus, which was really fun. And while we were there was a kid who was opening up his own branch office. He was like 20, 21 years old. And what the branch opportunity in CUTCO is, as a college student, if you show promise and you make enough sales, you essentially make enough sales to graduate into the branch program, which allows you to run your own office for 4 months in the summer. And that's what this kid was doing. And he was telling me about the money he was making as a college student and the trips he was going on. The CUTCO program is pretty cool. I think every kid should go through the CUTCO program for at least one summer. And so since I didn't have really any other options to make money, I decided, okay, I'll try and sell knives. And people ask, is it door to door? It's not really door to door because you would get arrested if you showed up at someone's door with knives. And so we really can only do.
I thought it was door to door.
What's that?
I thought it was door to door. It's not?
It's by appointment based. It's like realtors. So like a realtor could not do FSBOs and knock on doors that way, but probably the more efficient way is to work on referrals. So that's what we start with our parents, and then we get referred to our aunts and uncles and neighbors, and then we kind of go from there. So that's why there's such a high turnover rate in CUTCOs, because the kids who feel comfortable calling their parents, once they get past people that they don't know, they either quit or they stay with it. And I was one of the weirdos that stayed with it.
And you're still with it.
I am, yeah. Still have a team.
Which is amazing. Okay, so I remember when you came into the office one time, we were talking about this because I didn't understand that you can make a team out of it. Like, you aren't now consistently calling people, but you have a team that is doing that.
Sure. Well, I mean, so CUTCO, here's the interesting thing about CUTCO. It's such a good product that it's almost too good in order for a sales rep to actually build a business, because if they're selling the knives, whatever the sets are, anywhere between 500 and 1,000 for a set, that's, you know, rather expensive when you're comparing it to knives that are in Walmart or any type of cheap set. But when you compare it to like nicer cutlery, the coolest thing about CUTCO, since they're made in America, is they're guaranteed forever. So when you buy them, you have the entire set. Whenever you need them sharpened, you get it sharpened. You never have to buy knives ever again. When I sell you the entire set of knives, now I have to go and find more clients to continue building the business. And so when I came up with, I didn't come up with a realtor program. It was already established on the West Coast, where essentially realtors were engraving their information on the CUTCO blades, giving them as closing gifts. I was like, well, this is cool, because this is one of the only residual businesses that CUTCO has to offer, because when realtors run out of gifts, they need to buy more gifts. And so I can continue to build my clientele, but keep the clients that are still giving the gifts. And so that's when I kind of transferred from residential CUTCO sales to realtor sales.
So is your team then for the real estate side, or is it for the consumer side?
Yeah, so, and I'm sure we'll get into that with the progression of the story, but basically the clients that I have, I don't have a whole lot of clients that are still just ordering a paring knife or some for a Christmas gift. It's mostly realtors.
Yeah. Okay, so you're in the world of CUTCO, and then you decide to do the gifts for real estate agents. How hard was it? Because here's the thing. I know about it now, so I'm familiar with it. But how was it trying to convince realtors, like, hey, because there's a lot of realtors out there that, I mean, I was just talking to my neighbor the other day that don't give a gift.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Yeah.
And so it's like trying to convince, okay, it's not that I'm asking you to buy a gift. I'm now asking you to buy a CUTCO knife as a gift. How was it? How hard was that you weren't 19 anymore, but you were
at that
still,
point I was 21, 22, something like that. Well, so I'll tell you the pros and I'll tell you the cons. With real estate, the way it is in realtors, when I first started, there was 6,000 realtors in Ybor in central Indiana. Now there's, I think, around 9,000. At the end of this year, there'll be between 7,000 and 8,000 probably. Just being blunt. But there was like between 5,000 and 6,000 realtors when I first started. So that's a lot of business owners in a small community of space. And so the tough thing about realtors is they're constantly being bombarded, as you know, by everyone who's trying to selling something, because they're small business owners. And the issue is everyone's selling the same thing that the other guy is selling. So you'll get 10 calls from a mortgage broker, and they really don't have that much of a difference to say than the last guy. Maybe they're talking about rate, maybe they're talking about speed of service, something. And really what builds a business is long-term relationships. And as a 21, 22-year-old kid selling knives, I didn't really have the luxury of already have relationships built up in this business. And the average age of a realtor was 55. So I didn't have a lot in common either. So when I first got started in selling knives to realtors, I did everything wrong. I said things wrong. I was saying realtor instead of realtor. And then, and I was saying things like flipping homes instead of selling homes. I didn't understand real estate at all. I was like, so how many homes did you flip? And they're like, I didn't flip any homes. I was like, so why are you a realtor? I thought that's what realtors do. So it was pretty bad. But I was serious about this next venture and this next progression in my career, because I had gotten to the point where I was like, I love CUTCO and I love the people, but this part of the business just doesn't make sense to me. So if I can't make the real estate part of it work, I'll probably do something else. But I gave it a real shot. And in that first year, I worked really hard and I got a coach, which was probably the best thing I could have done. I got a coach who was at the time the #1 CUTCO rep in the nation. And I said, I want you to help me break the rookie record, which was actually her record. And at the end of the year, I broke the record, and CUTCO gave me a nice watch and all sorts of praises, and it was a lot of fun. And I was able to sell over $250,000 worth of knives to realtors in 1 year. So it's pretty cool to see the progression of someone who was selling a knife at a time to, in a short period of time, selling that much career sales in such a short amount of time. But it was really a tribute to the realtor program. I was just in the right place at the right time.
So we were talking about kind of the CUTCO progression, but then I know a little bit, but help me explain to everybody else what takes someone who's selling CUTCO knives to then want to, because your next progression was the magazine, right?
Kind of. There was a couple things in between, and people like to see like the successes and they don't necessarily see all the failures. And so I'll give you like an inside glimpse. There wasn't a lot of failures, but there was enough to make me want to not be a failure. So with CUTCO, so I was saying the pros and cons of CUTCO. So the pros was it's such a good product, and most people, when I got into real estate offices, knew about it. The tough part, or the cons, was the ability to actually get into those offices. Because most offices were so fed up with having all the vendors calling them on a regular basis and wasting the time of the realtors, or doing, not doing best practices when it comes to calling on realtors, and just it made it very hard for me, who was trying to do business the right way, but just getting stopped by all the gatekeepers. And I will tell you, I wanted to shout out to Carpenter Realtors. They were actually one of the first ones to allow me in the door when a lot of the other businesses weren't. And I understand why they weren't. They didn't vet me. They didn't know who I was. I had no track record. I was a kid trying to sell knives, which made no sense in real estate circles at the time. But there was Carpenter offices that took a chance on me. And so I always have a soft spot in my heart for Carpenter. But slowly, I would get into from a Carpenter office to they had a friend in a Remax office, and then Keller Williams and Century 21. And so finally, over the course of 2 years, I had pretty much every brand in real estate in Indianapolis recognizing me as a vendor, and a good one. And the coolest thing about being who I was that there was literally hundreds of loan officers, hundreds of title reps, and maybe not hundreds, but tons of vendors, thousands of vendors that are catering to realtors. But there was only one CUTCO kid. And so if I could embrace that, which at the time, like I will tell you that when you first start in CUTCO as a 19-year-old, all your friends make fun of you. None of them think it's cool until you get your first paycheck and you're making way more than them as a college kid and they're still playing video games. At that point, they start to respect you. But then you start it all over again when you get in the real estate world, because here's all these, powerful realtors driving Mercedes and thinks that they're better than you and all that stuff. And you get caught up in that. And as a 19-year-old kid or a 21, 22-year-old kid selling knives unless I embraced the CUTCO kid mantra, I would have been toast. But I embraced it. I was like, you know what, that's fine. I'm going to put my head down, work really hard, and hopefully lead by example, to the point where people were then calling on me to help do trainings, because they say, hey, you're a hustler and you understand sales. Can you do a training for us? I was like, I don't know how to sell a house. And they said, but you know how to sell yourself. So can you come and teach us that?
Right.
And that was pretty cool once that started happening.
That's
all right. So that didn't answer your question. I just gave you a back. I'm sorry. I got off topic.
Sorry. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So your question was, how do you go from that to starting the magazine?
Yeah. Cause again, I'm trying to think in my head, right? Like, and part of the reason we even wanted to ask you on was because I did know, I don't like to say the kid because then I was a kid too, but the kid that would come in and sell CUTCO. And I have to admit, I was one of those agents that was like, no, like it felt weird to me.
Yeah.
Giving a knife to someone, but now that I've embraced it, like it's okay. You know what I mean? So it's just very interesting to have someone go from that. Now, what I will say is anytime you came into the office, I think probably where I recognized that you really kind of took fold was you really talked to the agents. Like you really wanted to get to know us. Whereas a lot of people in this industry or any industry, anything where you're selling something, if you're not wanting to get to know me, then I'm sorry, I don't have time for you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I will give you kudos on that. Like you actually tried.
I appreciate that.
Us, you know,
and I still do. I mean, I still do. And you can tell sometimes where my business is lacking or suffering at a given moment is when I take the equation and it's become transactional. It's the same for everybody. Start seeing things as paychecks and all your busy work and you forget about the people part of it. And I think one thing that this shutdown of the economy has done for us is help us reevaluate what's important in our businesses. And so while we might be losing a few dollars, we're probably cutting the fat and getting back to the essential relationships of the matter.
That's what we want to do. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And part of why we did this is because, again, I think you forget about that personal connection and we forget about, in our mind, who our neighbors are.
Yeah.
You know? Okay. So tell us about then that 21-year-old that says, I have an idea of starting a magazine.
Well, okay. So something you said is really interesting to me because it reminds me of like one of the toughest parts of CUTCO, and that's still a tough part of CUTCO, is you're talking about the realtor specifically, which was my consumer, saying, I'm not going to give a knife. That's weird. Why would I do that? But then through the relationship, they start to listen to the message of why they were giving CUTCO. Now, the issue is if you take that person out of the equation and you leave a realtor left with $100 gift, and it's been a while since they actually talked to Remington or anyone else who's giving CUTCO, when they run out of those gifts, they automatically think, well, I can just run to Lowe's and get a gift card for $25. I'm only allowed to write off $25 anyway. So why would I? And then they start to think to themselves, why was I giving CUTCO in the first place? And it's not until I have a conversation with them again to remind them of the perks. And sometimes it works. Sometimes they unsell themselves from the product. But I used to think that that was an issue with, my product or CUTCO in general. And while it is something that CUTCO needs to think about, it's something we all need to think about, because even now I'm in ad sales and I can make a sale, but the renewal is completely up to my ability to maintain the expectation of that relationship. And so I just think it's funny because I've learned so much in the last 10 years of what makes a good salesperson and a great business owner. Because I say this all the time in my sales training, because we have flash forward, we're in over 100 markets now with this magazine. And so when I talk to our publishers, I tell them this quote, and this is controversial. Some people may disagree with me, but I believe that it is more important to be in the room than it is to be good at your job. And I see it over and over again. If you look at the vendors that are winning the business of realtors, it's the ones that are omnipresent. They're at all the meetings, they're on social media, they're everywhere, they're constantly in front of their consumer. And when that consumer, in this case the realtor, is ready to switch and use somebody else, they automatically think of the person who's been alongside them the whole time. Now, the renewal of the sale relies on how good they are at their job. You can land them, but then can you keep them? And that depends on how good you are. But isn't it amazing? Like, I really believe that it's whoever's in the room, it's more important than actually being good at your job.
It is. I was even talking with some people just talking about social media, and you probably experienced this. We weren't in social media because I at first, I always thought social media from my perspective is it's like, always post pictures of yourself, that's considered vain. Like I just didn't like it. And I didn't want to post pictures of myself. But if I actually look at the algorithms, the pictures of myself are the ones that get the most likes.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's interesting. And so you almost have to, you get to the point where it's like they know and like you way before they trust you, which is funny because, and it's hard sometimes in our industry because it's like, but you don't understand, that person that is on social media all the time, they don't know what they're talking about. But yet those people have grown up with them, right? They now know and like them. So it doesn't even matter if they're good at their job.
There's a link to, there's an actual study done on a link to the ability to make someone laugh and a direct link to that person trusting you. If you can make someone laugh, they trust you more.
Okay, so we're going to reset here for a second because Adam's holding up the little sign. I know he hates it. He's like, why do you do that? It's because I'm weird. I don't know what I'm doing. You're just now joining. I'm Cameron Geesaman with Geesaman Homes. Yes, I did it right, Remington. This is Remington Ramsey. And we are just kind of talking about his progression starting from when he was 19 as a CUTCO rep to now doing a magazine, which we haven't answered that question. So we're going to.
I know. I keep getting distracted. I'm sorry.
If you've just joined, make sure that you give a thumbs up or click the like or share. I'm learning through this that it's the sharing that really actually is helping us. So we do ask to try to help support us grow this channel, so to speak. Please share. And then Remington has also agreed to give away a free CUTCO knife. At the end, we're going to do a little giveaway, and we're really excited about that. So stay tuned for that. So now back to the show.
That was great.
It'll be normal and it'll feel fluid. It doesn't. Okay, so the original question was, what made you want to start a magazine? Yes.
Okay. So I've taught enough of my progression, so now I can just tell you the answer to that story. I have always been one to think a little bit differently and think a little bit bigger.
No.
When everyone wanted to be on the cover of the magazine, I wanted to own the magazine. When everyone wanted to have a world record in the book of Guinness, I wanted to own Guinness. And so that kind of mantra, like one of my mentors from afar that I just kind of watched, well, I'll get into that later. But essentially, I wanted to own a magazine, and I thought it would be really cool if it was centered around something that I knew really well at that time was real estate. The best thing I ever did was not try to do this on my own. If I tried to do this on my own, I'd still be printing the second issue in my parents' basement. And we'd be printing ads upside down in inverted colors and all sorts of stuff, because there's a lot of infrastructure that was already built from the publishing company that I partnered with on this. So the best thing I ever did was partner with N2 Publishing. That I get along with the founders really well. We have like-minded morals. And what we needed to do was figure out if, when I launched the magazine, so that's a whole other story, is like launching the magazine, like creating the idea. I knew for a fact it was going to work. There was no doubt in my mind that realtors love seeing their name and face in print. They're super competitive. They're driven. So they want to see what their competition's up to. And I knew the vendors well enough to know that if I was into this, they would be into this. When we first started the magazine, it was in 2015 in January. And they said, hey, we're going to give you 3 to 6 months to get this off the ground. We're going to give you our resources. You need to go sell the advertising, collect vendors that are saying that they're going to commit to you for 1, 2, or 3 years, and then create all the content, because we don't know what to print. I was like, I don't know what to print. I don't know what these realtors want. So the best thing that I ever did was I met with 50 real estate professionals before I even got off the ground. And I still have my book. I carry it with me everywhere. I took so much notes. I was like, okay, we're going to start this magazine. What do you want to read about? What do you currently read about? What kind of magazines do you read right now? Half of them thought I was crazy, and so did the other half. So it was pretty interesting. But I will tell you that it was so fun launching that sucker, getting it off the ground, because realtors who told me that would have never worked, I said, I'm going to put you on the cover the second it goes to print, and I did. You know, in short, I was tasked with not only figuring out, is this going to be successful in Indianapolis? What does it take to be successful? Can you gather all of the clientele? We ended up selling like $500,000 worth of advertising in 6 months. And even if we wouldn't have done that, there is no doubt in my mind that this program was going to be successful, because I knew what it takes to be successful in real estate selling things to realtors. And I knew that I could sell my services and knowledge to some degree. And the magazine was just the medium of doing that. But it became, I'll tell you, I knew it was going to be successful. I did not know it was going to be this quickly widespread successful across the nation. I can't get on Facebook or any social media platform without seeing posts from realtors in San Diego and Charlotte and Boston, like everywhere. It's pretty cool.
I have to admit, I didn't think it.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's newer, right? And you took it from a different perspective, right? Because you were used to, and I think that's what really stands apart with you of like, okay, I know what I'm good at. And we try to tell people this all the time, like, because realtors will call me, like or clients will call me and say, I want to become a real estate agent. That's great. Do what you're good at. You know what I mean? There are, like you said, I don't know if there's 9,000. Are there really 9,000 agents?
Yeah.
I've been saying 7,000 for 10 years. So
I know. That's why I was too, until someone corrected me. Yeah. At the beginning of this year, it'll go back. You know what? Just continue saying that, because by the end of this year, it'll actually be back down to that number.
Okay, I'm just going to stick with 7,000. So yeah. 7,000. But here's the thing. We all do our business differently. You can't, right. Even though, and that's why I always try to tell people, I'll tell you what I do, because here's the thing. What you're going to do is you're going to take what I do. You're going to take a couple pieces. You're going to get rid of the rest, and you're going to do maybe one of, you know what I mean? So we all do things differently, and that's okay. And that's also why there's enough fish in the sea, that at the end of the day, there's enough houses. It just depends on how you want to approach it. You know what I mean? And for the longest time, I want to do social, but it's interesting because I've really loved doing this. I know it's my only fourth one, but I really am enjoying it.
Hey, I think you're really good. I'm not just saying this because I'm on the show. Like, I watched the past episodes and I was really intrigued, and I think it's cutting edge. Even the platform you're using, I think you're doing a great job.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll watch the show.
Continues because I really am enjoying it. Like, I was talking to a friend the other day, and for me, it's amazing where I can pick up the phone 100 times. You probably do this with selling ad space. Like, you're on the phone constantly. You'll make 50 to 100 phone calls in a day, and you'll have tons of conversations, right? Yep. I can do that all day long. I have no problem picking up the phone and having a conversation. So at first, when I was like, oh, well, let's do this on live, I was like, oh gosh, no, nope. Me, I now view this as I'm having a phone conversation with you. It just happens to be live,
Yep.
So, and I specifically remember I'll meet people and I will ask you 100 questions before you ever ask me a question. And sometimes people are really annoyed by that, but I want to know everything about you.
Yeah. Building rapport is interesting to me. I used to ask a ton of questions that were not related to anything. And then we get to the end of an appointment and I knew a lot about them, but I didn't even have a chance to offer my value proposition. And so it actually was an unsuccessful appointment, even though I asked a ton of questions. So intentional rapport is a skill. It is a skill
that it's taken me 15 years to learn. When I first started in real estate, I was not good at it. We'll get back to the questions. If you're just now joining, I'm Cameron Geesaman with Geesaman Homes. This is, Remington Ramsey. And we're just kind of talking about his progression. Again, the reason why I asked you on, there's not too many 19-year-olds that start selling CUTCO and turn it into what I call you as a serial entrepreneur, because I never know what Remington's doing next.
We keep saying 19-year-old, and for the longest time, like, I was closer to that number than I was 30. Now I'm 31. So when we hear, like, I honestly thought I'd be the youngest kid in the industry for the longest time, and now there's kids younger than me in the industry on stage alongside me. So I guess that's a blessing to still be here. But I do want to finish real quick, because I forgot to mention this. So when I launched the magazine here in Indianapolis and sold all that advertising, it was pretty easy to get a big head. And honestly, there was no reason to get a big head. I worked hard, but the product and the company was the reason why it's successful, and the reason why it's still successful today. Because what we did was we took 3 veterans from the other product line and had them, and we said, okay, listen, is it just the connections that Remington had, or his hustle, or his ability to sell, that made this successful? Let's see if other people can do it. And so we just guided them through the process, showed them what I did, and they launched just in the same amount of time, and we're all successful, and they're still here today. And so to me, that was a testament to, one, how good the product is truly at connecting realtors with vendors and connecting realtors with each other, and what the actual content is, but then also the hustle and drive of the company to continue to be innovative. Because part of our program is events, and we can't do events right now. And we don't honestly know in the foreseeable future when we will be able to do events of more than 10 people. So we're constantly thinking about how can we add value added propositions to our current clients and future clients to keep the ball rolling. So it's been a blessing to work alongside some incredible people. I mean, we recruit A+ publishers in every single one of our cities.
That's awesome. I have a feeling that Remington's gonna figure it out. I really don't doubt that. So what is your favorite part of owning a company? Or running a company, whatever. Like,
yeah. Well, so that's a double-edged sword. I will tell you, I love two things. I love, specifically what I love about our company is that I own Indy REAL Producers. So that's my franchise.
Okay.
But then I coach all the other publishers. So I have many different hats. And at any one given day, there's never not something to do, and there's never not someone to impact. And I'm specifically coaching 5 launch directors right now, which are in charge of recruiting for the rest of the country. We're currently in 115 cities, and we have 200 identified cities that can hold a real producer. So once we hit 200, we'll have to figure out a new product or a spin-off product or something like that. So there's still work to be done for growth. But I was just sitting back, and I was like, I had a 45-minute coaching call with somebody, and all we did was talk about personal life and finances and faith, and nothing about the business. And it was such a good call that it reminded me that, like, my favorite part about this business is the people. In Indianapolis, it's the people that I'm impacting through the magazine. It's the realtors that are featured. It's the vendors that are really struggling in their business to meet with realtors, and we kind of tweak it a little bit, and then we finally get them in there. It's the vendors that are thriving their business, and they just want to be a part of this because of FOMO. I love them too. So I would say that, people is the cliche but right answer.
Okay, so you've got the magazine, you've got the events. Where does this podcast come into play? Because I have to admit, I didn't even know about it until
that means we're not doing our job.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, podcasts are hard. Those are hard to get the word out. And the podcast is really just a passion project. It's not a business. It's more like a nonprofit because I'm not bringing in any profit. I'm actually spending a lot of money. It's more like a passion. And really, it was just a platform for me to be able to get in something other than real estate, but still impacting people. It even started off as a real estate podcast because that's what we knew. And I ended up buying it from my partner and creating this new world of success in Indianapolis. So the podcast is As Indy Grows, and it's successful people. It's highlighting successful people doing successful things in Indianapolis. Nice work. Geesaman Productions. I love it.
He's sitting right there.
Yeah, right here.
He's right there.
So we have had a lot of fun with the podcast, and we've been able to interview and
amazing people.
Yeah, some pretty cool people that have nothing to do with real estate. And that's my thing. Like, I am so entrenched in real estate and the people in real estate, and I love those people. But sometimes it's just nice to meet the mayor or a reality TV star, or Miss Indiana, or, an entrepreneur just like me that has nothing to do with real estate. So those are the people that we've been highlighting. And season 2 just got launched.
This is Remington Ramsey. We have been talking about kind of his career of starting again as a CUTCO salesperson, but has turned that into an amazing career. I think that you definitely are someone that shows that you can start with something that may seem somewhat simple or actually really hard, and turn it into something that's really just amazing. In my opinion, for you to be doing what you're doing is amazing. I don't even have another word for it. For you to be doing a podcast with all these people, I might call you and tell you to call them and come on my little.
Well, I was going to say, if you asked me before we run out of time, I've got a couple people I think would be great for the show.
Please, yes, absolutely. So the question technically is, we changed it a little bit, but who do you think we should interview?
So the first is Mayor Scott Fadness. I have connections to him. He's been on the podcast. He actually is someone that's a huge advocate for mental health, and he was doing that before COVID was even a thing. And what we've seen with the shutdown is mental health illness rise, suicide rates rise. Some really really dark things that we probably don't want to get into on this show, but he has been fighting this in Fishers because Fishers' crime rate is so low that it gives you an opportunity to look into some of the other things. And the mental health rate of Fishers, where there's a lot of very wealthy people that you would think have it all together, they're actually suffering the most. And so I think he would be great to talk about that. And he's always looking for a platform to do so, especially during COVID. He'd be the first person I recommend.
Never met him. I don't know him. I mean, I've seen him, you know what I mean? Like when you're at events and stuff, but I have to admit, it's one person I don't know in Fishers. There's lots.
Yes. And I can connect you with him. Okay. Yusuf and Omar Barham. They are the owners of Coast to Coast Imports, which has a presence in Keystone, but then also in Fishers right off of 37.
Adam might really like that one.
Is Adam a car guy?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So funny story about them. I actually bought a Jaguar, or not a Jaguar. I bought a car off of them, and it wasn't the car that I wanted. And there was a bit of a scuffle. So if you have them on the show, the way I met them is actually hilarious. So you need to ask them that story. But there's some good people. I've since sold that car. Now I drive a pickup because it's more manly. People think I'm a man now, so I have to drive a man car. So Yusuf and Omar, they own Coast to Coast, but then Omar has since branched off and is launching a cigar lounge that's in the yard. And it was supposed to launch the day after the mayor or the governor shut down bars and restaurants.
We have pictures of it because we're waiting.
Yeah. So they gave all the money and the proceeds from that launch to first responders. And so not only do I think this would be a great show for them to come on and talk about that, but it'd be good for them to come on and talk about reopening the launch of the yard and when Fishers opens back up, and they're Fishers residents as well. So those are the two that I think you should have on the show.
I really appreciate that. For anybody also listening, if you have ideas or people that you want to suggest or recommend, we do ask that you help us in kind of growing that too. We're doing this twice a week to kind of build up. I don't know if I'll do it twice a week forever, but I'm really enjoying it. And it's amazing how we moved here in 91 and there were like, 3,000, 8,000 people in the city. And so now to be at 90 to 100,000, it's crazy. And I used to be that person that knew everybody, and I don't know anybody now. Pulling at straws sometimes. But okay, so one of the last questions, well, first off, before we get to the last question, tell everybody where they can find you or how we can support Remington.
Well, so the one thing that I do that literally everyone can engage in, whether in real estate or not, is probably a podcast. So you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Facebook, but the podcast As Indy Grows is As Indy Grows on Facebook and Instagram. And then we also, if you just want to do the audible version, we're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So that's what we're passionate about. I'm passionate about all these businesses, but sometimes there's just one that you're really psyched about. And right now it's the podcast.
It's get to know your neighbor for me. So we're good.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. It's one of those where it's like, again, I love real estate. I'll sell real estate all the time, but I'm enjoying this. Okay. And then you're on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram, you're on RemRam4, Facebook, Remington T. Ramsey. They can check out those spots, but ultimately to support. And I try to remind everybody on each show, sometimes if you can't support from a financial standpoint, clicking like, sharing, posting on Remington, commenting on his stuff, that supports Remington in other ways as well, so that it's not just feeling like you need to spend money to support somebody. So
for sure. For me, it's engaging in comments because I love the shares and I love getting out to more people, but I really want to know what people are thinking. Like, we just launched this last episode, and I want the conversation to start so we can see if people are actually like listening and what they think about what the words are. So that's what I ask for more than anything.
So Remington wants comments.
Engage in the conversation.
Cameron wants shares.
That's right.
Just kidding. I want comments too, but okay. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I ask every client, every friend. I feel like I ask this of people all the time, and so I'm asking all of my guests. And I didn't prep you for this, but what is your favorite part of your home and why?
My favorite part of my home?
Yep.
Wow, that's tough. So we bought a home that's in a very interesting pocket of Fishers. Most, not all, but most of Fishers is cookie cutter homes and a farmland property with no trees. And we really wanted mature trees. So we're in this small little pocket south of Ironwood Golf Course, 106 in Cumberland area. And I think what I love about my house the most is just the fact that we're on like an acre and it's completely wooded. And when it's fully grown in the middle of the summer, you can't see one of your neighbors. So it's really hidden. The backyard is pretty cool. We've got a nice deck. That's where I spend most of my time.
Totally kidding. That actually exists in Fishers.
Yeah.
You're sure you're in Fishers? I have to admit, the picture of your house one point, I was like, he's like in Broad Ripple or something. He's not.
I know. It's the best kept secret. 40 custom built homes in the 80s. Most everybody is a baby boomer in here. There's only a couple of younger families, but that's a really cool area.
In high school, I have a friend, and we used to go and party at her house.
Okay.
That's how I know where it's at. I know
that's me.
It is what it is. Well, I really, really appreciate it. Is there anything else that we didn't hit on that you want our neighbors to know about you, or that you felt like you wanted to say tonight that we didn't talk about?
I was just curious because I know we're going to do some sort of CUTCO giveaway. I don't know how you want to do it, but I'm totally cool. But I was just curious. I know you had Gary Reynolds on. I was curious if he gave away a John Deere tractor when you guys had him on.
He did not. You know, it was funny because when
I'm better is what you're saying.
What?
So I'm better is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
I mean, yep. It's funny because when I posted it, I didn't give any reference. I just said, Gary with Reynolds Farm Equipment is giving something away.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm thinking, how many people right now are thinking,
I'm getting a tractor.
Tractor?
Yeah.
No, he didn't give away a tractor. He gave away service, which when you have service on like the riding lawnmowers.
Oh, I bet that's great.
It's kind of pricey.
Yeah.
So we actually, it's funny that you mentioned, I think maybe you knew kind of what was going on because our question, so I kind of took it off of so Remington does for us real estate agents, he does kind of a live Zoom call. And during them, he gives giveaways. So honestly, thank you. I stole it from you.
Yeah, that's great.
I really liked the idea. So it is giveaway time. What we did is your first one was really great because it was about Carol Baskins, which was amazing.
Oh man.
But it was a question that like I felt like you asked a question that wasn't so specific that people couldn't answer, that like people could partake. So we're trying to do that. But in a fashion of we want you to watch our previous shows. Anybody that watched our Gary Reynolds interview, this should be very easy of a question for you. But so the rules are, we're going to ask the question, and then in the comments below, you have to type out the answer, and the person who answers it correctly, and I've learned from Remington, it has to be spelled correctly.
That's right.
This isn't a spelling. This is numbers. And it has to be the first person that replies. So this is kind of more of a live event. So if you're watching this after the fact, you can put what you think the answer is, but unfortunately, Remington will not be giving you a knife. So I've been doing a kind of like where I drag this out for a stupid amount of time because I kind of think it's fun.
Yeah, lure the audience in.
Right, lure them in. Unfortunately, it's not like where you have like a ton of people to lure them in. So I don't know.
You'll get a ton of views on this after the fact. People are like, man, I could have won that knife.
I know, right? what you need to do is show this gigantic, amazing knife and then feel really bad that they missed it so that they won't want to miss it again.
I'll go get it while you're doing this.
Okay. All right. So if you're just joining or you've been watching, we're going to give away, Remington is going to give away a CUTCO knife. Like we've been talking about, he sold CUTCO knives for a long time, still does, but then does other entrepreneurial stuff, which I can't wait to kind of see what else he does in his career. But for the giveaway, again, you have to answer the question. You have to be the first person to answer in the comment section. So we're monitoring the comments. So the question is, what year did Reynolds Farm Equipment begin operating in Fishers?
Ooh, that's good.
See, this is where we need music. See, my IT guy.
You want me to sing?
It's kind of shady. We don't have this like countdown, so or like this, like the what's the music?
Jeopardy.
Oh, Allison Stroll. Yes, you are correct. 1955. That is the year that Gary started, Mac. The year that Reynolds Farm Equipment started. So thank you for participating. We really appreciate that. Thank you, Allison, for joining.
Allison was actually watching that episode instead of us live so that she would be ready. She knew this was coming.
I will admit, Allison has lived here for a while. She knows a lot of the statistics of the city. And she was a friend of mine in high school. So I'm very excited that she got it. So what we will do, Allison, is show it. Oh, yes. Oh, I like the white. Yeah,
pearl white Santoku trimmer, the most popular knife that we sell.
Nice. Okay, so what is it?
It's a trimmer. So it's for fruits and vegetables, chicken, anything. Like you always want to cut food with it's about the size of the blade.
Okay.
And that's like the most popular size of a knife, but it's got that Santoku edge on it, so it's a little bit thicker. It's a really nice knife.
All right. Well, we really appreciate that, Remington, for you offering it up. So thank you. For everybody, thank you so much for joining us, for watching our show, this little thing called Get to Know Your Neighbor. Cheers to another great interview. Next week, I'm still waiting on one person, but as of right now, on Tuesday, we're going to be interviewing Jim Self. For those of you that don't know him, he's actually the athletic director at Hamilton Southeastern High School. I have known him since I was in since like 9th grade. He was actually my track coach. So I'm really excited about interviewing him. Remington, I'm going to get with you because we would love to interview both of those individuals, Scott Fadness and Yusuf and Omar. I would love to interview them and get them on the show. Again, just really trying to bring awareness to Fishers and make sure that we're supporting each other. This city is amazing, and I want to make sure that everybody knows about it. You can find us at Geesaman Homes. We are also putting all of these on our YouTube channel. We will get also that to you, Remington, so that you can share it on your spaces. But check us out I'm Cameron the Realtor, and then Cameron and Adam. Remington is at RemRam, and then also his podcast as Indy Grows. If you guys have any questions, please put them in the comments below. We will continue to answer any questions that you guys have, and you guys have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I really
Thanks for having me.
appreciate it a lot.